everyone. So we just got done watching Spider-Man No Way Home, and oh my goodness, it was insane. So this is my partner Samantha, my best friend Ethan, and I'm still mind blown right now. So I'm gonna go in and talk about some of the big things that we all noticed, because we all noticed different things and what made this movie so good. In my opinion, my favorite Marvel movie ever made. I don't know about you guys, but definitely up there in the top 5. It had to be for sure. Immediately starting off, we know in Spider-Man No Way Home, we see Peter's ramifications of him being Spider-Man, how that negatively affects everyone else in his life, like Peter and like Ned and MJ, for example. Peter and MJ, he's included in that as well. But what did you guys think about that? How that affected him, or how that affected Ned and MJ and their whole? Obviously, let me just get into. It's going to be a spoiler warning right here. I didn't say that at the beginning. Spoiler warning right here. We didn't really reveal anything right there. So spoiler warning.
Like it kind of goes without saying.
Kind of goes without saying. If you're here watching this, you know that there's going to be some spoilers here. But what did you guys think about how Ned and MJ were affected by him being Spider-Man?
That seemed shitty. Like, especially getting rejected from getting into college just because they knew him.
Yeah. That was rough.
Although Ned was kind of a moron, incriminating himself when they were interrogating him.
Oh yeah, that moment was hilarious.
He was just excited.
He was like, hold up, no, let's get this straight. I knew before everybody else that he was Spider-Man, and they're like, continue.
Son, you know why they got you.
You know exactly why they got you there. And he just kept talking, which I thought was funny. It was very in character for Ned, but it was also just, you're just like face palming the whole time. So what did you think about that? Did you like that Peter Parker moment of like realizing like, hey, my actions are affecting someone else negatively by everyone else knowing that I'm Spider-Man?
Like, I was happy that like the great power comes with great responsibility line came up, because like I feel like that was the whole point of this movie. Him realizing how much like is that he holds in his hands.
Yeah, exactly. And funny enough, jumping back to, we get that. The whole theme of this movie is with great power comes great responsibility. Obviously, every Spider-Man movie you get that, but this one you really feel the weight of that, I believe. And we also get, when we're going through the whole lawyer scene, like I was kind of wondering how they would get him out of the legal trouble. We get one of the best lawyers of all time. We get Matt Murdock, and we get Charlie Cox back as Daredevil, which, well, we only see Matt Murdock, but we know our man's Daredevil, which was really cool to see him just casually brought into the MCU, because, in my opinion, I thought he was a perfect Daredevil. It's really interesting to see where they go with that from there. But yeah, it's all in all, like getting that back, him getting them out of legal trouble. But then the problem with that is, even though he got out of the legal trouble, he still had the problem of the court of public opinion, which he like, not Dr. Strange, but Matt Murdock acknowledges to him. He's like, hey man, you're going to have to deal with that as well. So it was interesting seeing him deal with that. Going to school, everybody mad, like where you have half the people mad, half the people supporting him, people supporting Mysterio, which it was interesting seeing that dynamic play out in kind of the political realm. Like nowadays too, you kind of have the two different sides, and that was kind of clashing all in all against Peter Parker as well,
Yeah. I feel like that whole bit was really kind of just a flex that they got Matt Murdock in the movie.
You're right.
They didn't really dive too much into the technicalities of like what the charges even were.
Right.
Or like what he
They just got dropped.
He's just like, I'm a good lawyer.
You're like,
These
okay.
charges aren't going to stick. Okay.
Oh yeah, back to your point though. We get a scene, a brick gets thrown through the window, and like he just reaches and grabs the brick, and you even get the scene of Peter's like, whoa, how'd you do that? And he's like, I'm a good lawyer. Which was kind of the joke of what you were getting back to, which was pretty funny too.
Speaking of bringing people in, like Venom.
At the very you're jumping way ahead there. But yeah, spoiler alert, we do see a post-credit scene that does have Venom. So anyway, but we really see the ramifications of what Peter Parker's his identity being revealed. We get to see what that does to him, which leads him to then go to Doctor Strange, which was cool to see him go there. Like, hey, I need help. Like my actions are hurting other people. I need the world to forget Spider-Man. And obviously from the trailer we see, okay, he's Doctor Strange is doing the spell, and they're going through, and he's like, wait, but I want Aunt May to know. I want Ned to know. It was just it was a cool interaction between them and him essentially messing up that whole spell.
I think something interesting is they both like needed to grow in that instance, because Peter didn't like ask questions before like going right into the spell, and also Doctor Strange just assumed
jumped into it.
Also, and he was like, "Oh, and it's a no big deal." Like, even though that
Bennett Wong.
Yes,
yeah.
Wong warned him.
He warned him.
But he did it anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
he acknowledges though. Remember, he's like, "I forget you're a kid sometimes."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the whole bit with that too is, especially when after he messed the spell up and he's got mad at Peter because he didn't even try to like appeal his case like the normal way. The spell.
Yeah.
I feel like that applies on the grander scale too, because he didn't exactly really try to defend himself over the Mysterio thing, anyways. Because I feel like after Infinity War and Endgame, Spider-Man would have some pull. People know he's an Avenger.
Yeah.
The Avengers know him.
That's true.
Who the fuck is Mysterio?
Yeah.
Like he shows up for half a movie, and then like everyone's all ride or die for Mysterio.
Yeah.
It's like, why?
Yeah.
Like, Spider-Man's an Avenger. He saved the fucking Earth from Thanos. That was kind of a dig from Doctor Strange for just kind of Peter in general, not just as Peter, but as Spider-Man.
As Spider-Man, yeah.
That made me think of something else too with the great power and great responsibility thing. Just because he does have access to a magical person like Doctor Strange doesn't mean that that's the automatic thing that you should do just because like you're a superhero and you have that access. You still need to like stay grounded.
But with that, obviously the spell is botched. That starts bringing in other people from different universes, and I was really wondering how that would happen. So what ends up happening with that, so anybody that knows Peter Parker as Spider-Man from different universes start getting pulled in to our universe, the MCU's universe. And the first instance we get of this is when Peter Parker goes to meet up with the MIT person to kind of plead his case for MJ and Ned. Doc Ock shows up and they have a really cool battle. Doc Ock actually integrates his arms with the nanotech, which was really interesting to see. Kind of see that dynamic between the two there. Then with that, you kind of get that, like, wait, you're not Peter Parker, that whole scene, and then also Green Goblin's introduced until we, get drawn back. Don't need to get into the intimate details with that, but it was really cool to see Doc Ock come back and then Green Goblin make that appearance right there at the end in his full mask, suit, and everything there, which was really cool. Sorry, I was getting long-winded there.
I think one thing I really appreciated that they did with Doc Ock and Green Goblin specifically out of all of them is they gave them a lot of moments as like Dr. Octavius and Dr. Osborn to like be scientists.
Yes,
so you got to see that side of them a lot more than you did in even the original movies.
Right.
Which was kind of cool.
And we even got the I'm something of a
scientist.
Yes, we got that OG line back.
Yeah, but like it made them feel like I don't know, like smarter villains in general because you got to see them in their element.
Which you didn't get to see too much of that with Norman, really. Especially too.
Like you saw more of it with Doc Ock and Spider-Man too, but you didn't see too much of that at all. Really, the only bit was in the laboratory. Back to formula. Yeah. And he just shoots himself up with roids and then goes on a roid rage and fights Spider-Man.
Yeah, and the good thing about the cool thing you get with that, so Peter ends up getting, so Aunt May gets to him, is like, with great power comes great responsibility. It's, you can't just send these people back to die, because essentially you get that whole scene from the trailer where it's like, all these people die fighting Spider-Man. So Peter actually, Aunt May's like, you can't just send them back to die like that. So then Peter's like, he goes against Doctor Strange, has a really cool fight with Doctor Strange, just visually stunning. And then he ends up beating Doctor Strange, trapping him in the mirror dimension. And he uses math, which was really cool. Doctor Strange was using his magic, and Peter gets his whole moment. It's like, what's cooler than math? Magic. Or what's cooler than magic? Math. It was just really cool, and he beats Doctor Strange. So that was neat to see. Also with that, once Doctor Strange gets trapped, that's when Peter tries to help all the other villains, like, let's cure you to get you back to the universe instead of just sending you back to die. And that's when he starts working with what he thinks is a good guy, Norman Osborn normally, and Doc Ock, who still has the broken inhibitor chip. Half the movie, he has the nanotech like under control, because once it integrates with Doc Ock's suit, the nanotech, he can control it, which was cool to see. So Doc Ock couldn't do anything half the movie. And it was cool end up seeing once they, Peter starts fixing every one of them, he gets the inhibitor chip puts that in Doc Ock. Doc Ock ends up being his good self again.
I'm gonna hold her until she.
Speaking of visitors from other universes, we have a visitor in this video universe. This is my little child Mo here. So she came to pay a visit.
She's
so
done.
Okay.
And she's out.
Okay. She's out. But anyway, so she's going back to her universe, her own universe, which is particularly she likes chewing on bags. So that is what she's doing.
That's why we have to take
a quick commercial. Oh, she's going right back. No. Anyway, but yeah, so it was interesting. We get to. Once Peter goes in and starts trying to fix everyone, that's when we start seeing, you can already see kind of behind it, like, Electro is already Sandman's already kind of questioning, because Sandman actually helps Peter at the very beginning. Like, they have a fight scene. He's like, hey, he thinks it's Toby's Peter, so he's ready to go to battle with him, essentially. So that ends up happening, but then you can already see Electro, Sandman at that point after he's already been captured and kind of brought in there. And obviously Green Goblin's already got other sinister plans available. Got one of my other babies in here.
So cute.
So anyway, eventually, as we can see, they're all villains, so we know. So that's when Green Goblin starts. That's when he becomes Green Goblin. They all come together, essentially. Everybody but Doc Ock, who has that inhibitor chip fixed now, that's when, all right, we're going to start fighting. And they have a really cool fight scene. Peter, Green Goblin, some of the others. I just really enjoyed that fight scene.
Oh yeah, the bit prior to that when he was fixing everybody, in that interview that
the villain interview,
the villain interview that Willem Dafoe and Alfred Molina and Jamie Foxx did, Alfred Molina said that one thing that he liked about the Raimi villains was that he felt like they were just people that have bad things happen to them, and so it's not that they're just villainous to the core. It's like they're trying to achieve things, and then unfortunate things happen in the process of achieving that.
That then drove them to
villainous intent.
Right.
So then you really kind of get to see that come to fruition with this. Because then once Doc Ock has that inhibitor chip fixed and he's not hearing the voices from the AI and the tentacles anymore, then he's not a villain anymore.
Right.
Pretty much.
Exactly. So when he gets that inhibitor chip, he switches. He's back to regular Doc Ock wanting to help Peter, which is really cool. And when they all he gets blasted out the window and he's kind of gone for a little while. Yeah. So Electro blasts him out the window. So that's one of the things that happens there. We have a really intense scene after the fight with after the fight with Green Goblin and stuff like that. We have the scene where it's a really, really tough scene to watch. We have the scene where Green Goblin is fighting Peter. He ends up, he gets Aunt May to go running. She's essentially got the cure, or she thinks it's the cure for the Green Goblin within Norman. They go down, so they're fighting, go downstairs, get in the lobby. Aunt May tries to get away. Green Goblin calls his glider, hits Aunt May, which we saw, she got hit pretty hard.
Yes,
let's be honest, she got hit really, really hard.
I think it was Knives Out too on that glider.
I'm pretty sure knives were out on the glider too. Hits her, it sends her flying. You don't really think too much about it because instantly Green Goblin tries to throw a bomb and hit Aunt May. Peter stops the bomb from hitting her. Aunt May gets up and she kind of seemed a little
something was. I couldn't figure out what it was.
She seemed a little off in that moment. She was a little out of it a little bit, but she did just get hit really hard. Yeah. And that's when she brings up she actually says the line, "With great power comes great responsibility." It's our first time actually hearing that in the MCU. And actually the first time hearing that since Tobey's movies, because we didn't hear that actual line in Andrew's either. So it was very interesting to see that play back. And then shockingly, Aunt May dies, which threw me off. Tears in the movie theater. It was something else.
I think what's interesting about the way that they did that is kind of similar to the way it was in the Raimi Spider-Mans, because it's when the line comes. Well, I guess it's not exactly the same, but that Uncle Ben's death and then Aunt May's death come at points when Peter's particularly bitter, and I think it does come back to that struggle of how being Spider-Man affects Peter Parker's life, because it's because in the Raimi Spider-Man the guy robs the wrestling joint and then Peter has the opportunity to stop him, but he
lets him go.
He was pissed,
Yeah.
so he let him go.
Yeah.
And then at that point in No Way Home, Tom was fed up with trying to fix, because they tried to fix all the villains, and of course Norman turned on him, so he was betrayed and pissed, and so he's trying to say, let's just go with Doctor Strange's plan and send them all home. This isn't our problem. It's not my problem. We don't have to do this.
Yeah.
And then that's when Aunt May drops the line on him and dies.
And then dies. And it was a really hard moment.
I feel like it didn't stick with him as much, though, as I thought it would. Like, well, it did, but, like, then at the end, Toby and Andrew had to, like, remind him.
To your point, jumping back towards the final fight, that he had that like that vengeance that you were talking about. Like he had that when he was fighting Green Goblin. Like you could see, like he had that same like it doesn't matter. Like I'm gonna kill you at this point.
And that, I think that was set up really well on multiple levels, because in one way, I mean, it had to be Toby to remind me of that, because Toby made the exact same mistake.
Yeah.
And he even had that line before where he said, when he was on the rooftop, that I wanted him dead and I got what I wanted.
Yeah.
And it didn't help.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, too, Tom Holland was going to kill Norman with the blades on the glider, the same way that he died in the Raimi Spider-Man. And so that was kind of Toby getting his chance to stop that from happening too.
Yeah.
And not just for him, but for Harry as well, because that same bitterness and vengeance destroyed Harry too.
Yeah.
And it's the same, the glider as well was what got Harry. Jumping into that, once everybody started getting pulled into the universe, we see a really cool scene. Ned starts being able to use magic. There's a point earlier in the movie before he has him think, like you can see he does a little, you see the little like sprinkle of like Doctor Strange's magic. And it's cool because he mentions earlier that magic kind of runs in his family. So he starts being able to use the ring from Doctor Strange, and he's like, find Peter Parker. Well, we see from a distance he opens a portal, and you can see it's Spider-Man, but it's Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, who we see in full suit, and he comes out, and we have just a really funny scene with him. Like they're like, okay, prove you're Spider-Man. He's like, prove I'm Spider-Man. He like touches the ceiling. MJ's like, climb across the ceiling. He's like, does this not prove enough that I'm Spider-Man? So he climbs across the ceiling and gets a cobweb because Ned's like mom or aunt or whatever it was like told him to get the cobweb, and I really liked that scene. And then soon enough they try to find Peter Parker again, and Toby comes out, and that was just a really really cool emotional scene. Ned's like, what? Because Toby's wearing normal clothes in that instance. He had a suit on underneath, and he's like. And Ned's like, wait, we just got a normal guy? And he's like, come on, he's Spider-Man too. It was cool because they have a whole like conversation, like we get to see all three Spider-Man, all of our live action Spider-Man have like conversation, and that was really cool to see them like working in a lab together. We got to see them talking about, you know, Tom and Andrew have web shooters, obviously. Toby's got the organic, so we got to see them talk about that too, which was really cool. Did any moments about that stick out for y'all, or that you enjoyed within them like kind of doing the scientist stuff together?
Everything was nice. It was like satisfying, and
it was.
There were so many scenes that were satisfying. Like I said, that moon shot where they're all like, you know what I'm talking about?
When they like swing in front of the moon and stuff.
Yeah,
that was really
satisfying, and it was really nice when they were cheering each other on. Like when one of them was it Andrew's? Yeah,
you can tell Andrew was down a lot of this movie, like from what the events that happened.
They had both went through so much.
Yeah, and Tom was so young in his Spider-Man life. Yeah. I think that scene, because you know obviously depression's a big thing, and it was very cool to see, like Toby's told Andrew like you're amazing. He told him like multiple times like no, you're amazing, you're awesome. And it was really cool to see him like build his confidence back up, and their dynamic.
Talking to themselves.
It was really talking to themselves.
Yeah.
They hugged each other, which was really cool to see. Yeah, going through all that, just seeing Toby, Andrew, Tom all together, fighting the main fight, beating the villains, curing the villains. You know,
instead of killing them.
Yeah, instead of killing them. And back to what we were talking about earlier, that fight between Tom and Green Goblin at the end was absolutely that was what we needed to see. It was.
Something that I really like about that too, about the curing instead of killing thing, it kind of goes into like politics today if you think about it.
Why's that?
Like how there's so many band-aids we put over things, but we don't cure the underlying issue of these systems. So I appreciate that. I feel like over the pandemic, maybe some of the things that happened, like they wanted to show those kind of themes in the movie, and I thought it was just a very thoughtful movie. Like,
yeah, I mean that you say it is kind of like a subtle way of like intoning, like turning the temperature down, and like kind of remembering that even that the opposition are people too, and that you can find solutions where everybody wins instead of just eliminating what you think the problem is.
Yeah.
Which would have been sending them back, not fixing them.
Yeah.
So they fixed them and sent them back.
Yeah.
Which was a cool dynamic to see there. In the end, Tom gets in the position where he beats Green Goblin hand-to-hand combat, and he picks up the glider and he's about to stab Green Goblin with the glider. Toby jumps in and stops him, and he's like, because they had that conversation before about vengeance and, you know, that can consume and overwhelm you, and Toby knows that all too well. Taylor reference there.
Yep.
But anyway, but he stops him, and then Toby gets stabbed from behind, which I was like, they didn't just kill my man, did they?
I thought they did.
But they didn't.
Well,
it did.
It stressed me out because I was like, well, golly, why is he standing there still?
He's just and he got stabbed, but they end up all, like, they get them all sent back, but the only solution is, even though they get them all sent back, everybody that knows who Peter Parker or knows Spider-Man, essentially from different universes, is about to tear through the reality. And the only solution for it is for Doctor Strange to do his spell again, but everybody forgets Peter Parker, Spider-Man, which means every experience that everybody's ever had with Peter Parker that is because of him being Spider-Man is forgotten. So like Ned, MJ, Doctor Strange, nobody essentially knows who he is at this point. He's all on his own. Aunt May's passed away. Everybody else gets sent back, so all the other Spideys, they're good, they get sent back, all the other villains get sent back. It really ends on a note of Spider-Man being him on his own again. He gets in his own apartment. He can't go to finish high school. There's even an interesting scene. He's got a GED book because he can't go back. He's not in high school, essentially, at that point, right? I mean, because everybody knew that, so it kind of wipes pretty much everybody's memory about him. So he's going to have to fend for himself, college, all that stuff. It's a really beautiful scene at the end with MJ. Because they have an amazing scene where she's like, come find me, and she tells him that she loves him, and he's about to say it, and she says, no, you come find me and tell me. And she says, and if you don't, I'll figure it out, because I figured it out the first time, because she figured out that he was Spider-Man all along. And it was a really sweet moment. And when he's going to tell her at the end, it was a really interesting moment, because he's about to tell her, he sees Ned and her doing good, and even he was still kind of questioning doing it, and then right at the end he sees the Band-Aid above her eye, and that was like him being like, I don't need to tell her, because I caused that, that injury. I caused her pain. Mm-hmm. So he walks away, gets his own apartment in New York, makes his own suit, and is classic. I mean, I'm talking about it is classic Spider-Man. It's got a shine to it. Kind of looks like the first shoot at the beginning of the Spider-Man PS4 game. It's beautiful. And we actually even got the Rent's doing the first. Like, you hear that whole thing, and it sounds like Mr. Dinkovich or whatever his name is, which was pretty cool.
Like the apartment. I mean, it's
similar.
not the same one, but it's the same, like,
mm-hmm.
It seems like it's the same building for sure.
Yeah, but all in all, like, there was just so many moments in that movie that chills, tears. I felt a whole range of emotions seeing Spider-Man No Way Home. It's my favorite MCU movie so far. It filled the nostalgia. It filled all the new things too. Like, it was Tom Holland's story too. Even though you had all of that, I felt it was Tom Holland, Peter Parker's story. And I didn't forget that throughout the whole movie,
I also feel like me personally didn't get closure from the old movies, so yeah. I feel like this is the closure I needed.
Yeah, I agree.
Because the Andrew one was one of my favorites, and then we watched the Tobys again, and I was like, oh yeah, I like Toby too.
Yeah, yeah.
I really liked the way that they did it with the older Spider-Man too, because the way that they're able to impart their wisdom onto Tom's Peter,
mm-hmm.
While he's going through the familiar emotions that we've already been through with the other two.
Yeah.
With like Uncle Ben, except now it's Aunt May.
Yeah.
The great power comes great responsibility, and what that actually means.
Yeah.
Like what it means to be Spider-Man is that you're saving people and not
Yeah.
That's right.
taking vengeance and killing people because you're angry or because you can. I felt Toby in particular really shined with that.
I agree. You could feel that him imparting that like wisdom on him.
And then because like the way you said too, when he's building Andrew's confidence back up, also is he's kind of like the Papa Spider-Man.
Yeah.
He's kind of the father that they never got because
yeah, I agree.
His actual father died.
Right.
Yeah.
He gave out all that wisdom, and the good thing about that is each of those Spider-Maners not going to forget that moment, because although everybody else forgot that, he's not going to forget that. So Toby and Andrew are not going to forget that moment either. So say we do run into them at another time, what he was taught by those Spider-Men is going to be something that sits with him, and is going to be a crucial part of this character, which is going to be really cool with Tom's Spider-Man moving forward, because he was kind of past that mantle, like officially, like part of who he is now forever is going to be from Andrew and Toby's Spider-Mans. Yeah. So I really love that part of it, and that movie was everything I wanted it to be and more. I was sad when it ended. Post-credit scene, Tom Hardy's Venom comes up. Very, very briefly, he gets sent back too, but the Venom symbiote stays. Yes. Which is fun. We have another visitor from another universe as well.
He just keeps wanting to be in the video. So.
But yeah. What was your favorite moment from the movie?
I can't pick a favorite moment, but there were some. It was really good, and like I just love that everybody did such a good job, and I got really hyped to watch like the William Dafoe, like he was so hyped in that interview, the villain interview that we watched. So I love when people are excited to do their job, and you could tell he was really excited, and I appreciate that like you got to see his face a whole lot, and he just was loving it. Yeah. He did a great job.
You got to see the Green Goblin's facial expressions without that mask on, so a lot of times he's
yeah,
it was funny.
He
gave it his all in that movie.
Oh yeah, he did.
He loved it too.
He was having a blast making it, no doubt.
What about your favorite moment, Ethan?
I think it was probably still that first fight between Green Goblin and Tom Holland Spider-Man in the apartment. Just because that was just toe for toe, but with a bit more of an updated choreography. Yeah. From the Raimi Spider-Man, so you got to see Green Goblin like really be like a threat to Spider-Man.
I agree.
Like, man, he was manhandling him at some point.
He was. I agree.
So like, I don't know, and then it just kind of brought it all together. I don't know. I thought that part was awesome.
I think my favorite moment was Toby giving Andrew the confidence, telling him he's amazing, and seeing everything that. You know, Andrew was very, very upset because he lost his MJ essentially with Gwen falling. So Toby giving him, saying, "Hey, you're amazing." That was nice because it was like Toby telling me that. So it was like, just remember, you're amazing always, you know. And also we got the moment of another one that Andrew was the one that saved MJ, and there was this really beautiful moment between them. He's like, "Hey, are you okay?" And she could see the look on his face, and she goes, "Yeah, are you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah," and it was just a cool moment.
I'm glad he got that.
Me too. You guys, Spider-Man No Way Home was everything you could want and more. Highly recommend going to see it. I will be going to see it again in like 2 days, so I'm super excited for that. Special thank you to Ethan and Samantha both being in my video. You know, hopefully we can do some of this more theater times. So go see Spider-Man No Way Home, and leave a comment. What's your favorite part in Spider-Man No Way Home? Obviously, this is a spoiler movie, so feel free to drop whatever you want, because if you're watching this video, you've already seen the movie.